Yeah.
Welcome back to Peak Speed Lab 164, where gravity and mass meet friction, and the ramp decides who wins. Okay, enough of that intro. What we've got going on today is the measurements for the first car. We've got this vehicle. I'm gonna try to see this. I've written number one. Okay, this is called the high voltage. This car actually comes in the Hot Wheels pack that you can get from like Walmart or probably Target, Amazon, whatever it is. This has additional tracks and connectors, and it can be used for obviously extending your courses. So I purchased a few of these so that I can do both the regular, like say, short form drag strip, and also the, as I've mentioned in previous videos, the quarter mile scale, 164 scale drag strip. So that is in the process of being built. But in the meantime, I've got like a short form drag strip that we're going to start with. But first, we've got the measurements. Now, I started doing the video of me actually performing the measurements, like each of these measurements, and it was pretty boring and tedious, I got to be honest with you. So, but what I will do is I will go over the information from the first car. Again, this is the high voltage mark number one. I actually have four of these, and I'm going to measure all four. We'll kind of see what the consistency is, and not only in their measurements, but how they run. Okay, so with this one, with the number one, I'm gonna pull up my computer, right, my laptop, so I can read off these numbers. Since this is really about the measurement piece. Now, I covered the instruments that I use for everything from for the scale, for the weight, and then for the calipers that I'm using, and the digital gauge that I'm using to test the center of gravity. So here's what we got, okay? So again, whoop, there we go. The high voltage, the bottom, for anybody who's interested, I don't know if you can read that. I hope that kind of comes out, because I know there are numbers on the bottom of these that came again from the pack. We're using the scale that I had talked about, the fusion scale, and then I had calibrated it. Okay, so the weight of this in grams was 34 grams for this vehicle. That falls into the weight class of of C. So I've got A through F. So the weight classes I've got set up, we've got less than 20 grams is A. We've got 20 to 29 grams is B. Then we have 30, so it'd be like 29.99, okay. And then 30 grams to 39 will be C. We've got 40 to 49 will be D, 50 to 59 E, and of course 60 grams and above will be F. Okay, so we've got a lot of cars that you can't see. That I've got everything from your standard cars that come in the packs to these off-brand kind of toy cars that come in these sets that you can buy, like let's say CVS, for kids, to the real riders and some of the higher end black edition, silver edition cars, which we'll be getting into down the road. But first things first, we got to kind of get the groove going. We got to set things up. So anyway, those are the classes. This is the weight class of C. And then we've got closed wheel, because we're going to track. We'll have categories for closed wheel. We have category for open wheel. And then we've got a category for what's called semi-fendered. So you'll see some cars that will have, let's say, open wheels in the front, but then they'll be fendered in the rear, okay? And then there'll be like truck, van, SUV. Then we have the condition. So this one is factory condition. I'm not going to modify any of these cars. So in general, they're going to be as is. But I do have the factory like if there's a minor issue, if I find a defect on it when the packaging comes, or if it's been damaged, like maybe I'll buy some used cars and maybe there'll be some damage. I don't know. We'll see. But in general, they're going to be factory fresh. I'm going to use them out of the package and unaltered. Next situation we've got is to track is the country of origin. Now these cars and some of the other brands, not just Hot Wheels and Matchbox, but these other brands can be made in a lot of different countries. So I'm going to be tracking countries of origin as well. This case is Indonesia. I actually haven't looked at the other three. I'm going to assume they're Indonesia, but I'm going to, as I enter these car stats, I'm going to actually include that. So modification we already talked about. These are stock. We're not going to, there's no plan to modify. So we'll see how that works. Okay. Now, wheelbase. Now, I had mentioned that I'm going to use both the imperial measurement system and metrics. So we have the measurement of this wheelbase is and measured at 1.755 of an inch. And then we've got 44.58 millimeters. Okay. So, I know I keep saying K. It's kind of like folks who say like all the time. Or, mine is okay. I'll try to keep that to a minimum. The next metric is hub to hub. So, that is from, we're going more on the inside. So, your wheelbase is this from center to center of the wheel. Hub to hub, we're measuring underneath, so from this hub to this hub. Okay. So the hub to hub is 0.7635 inches, which converts to 19.39 millimeters. The reason that we're going to track all of this is down the road, again, once we have a lot of cars in the database, I'm going to be interested in seeing patterns in performance and in performance, pretty much is what we're going to be looking for. Okay, and then the next, we do that for both the front and the rear axles or rear wheels. Okay, so for the rear wheels, this is going to be a little different because if you'll notice, the rear wheels are a little wider than the front wheels. So the hub to hub and the way they're positioned is different. So we've got a hub to hub of rear wheel of 0.2975 inches, which equates to 7.56 millimeters. Then we have the tire width, and we do both the front and rear tires. So the front tire width, 7.56. Oh, no, I'm looking at the wrong thing. So, look at that. It's been a long day again. No excuse. I may have to edit this part out. Maybe I'll do a bloopers reel. We'll see. So getting back to the rear hub. The rear hub to hub in inches is actually 0.5935, and then the millimeters 15.07. Then now we're going to go to the tire width. So front tire width 0.2075 of inches, which equates to 5.27 millimeters. Rear tire width is 0.2975, which equates to 7.56 millimeters. So again, I showed you the rear wheels are wider. Okay, front tire diameter. We're measuring diameters as well, not just the width, but diameter. And the front tire diameter 0.4915. Then we have that converts to 12.48 millimeters. Rear tire diameter is going to be 0.571 with millimeters of 14.5. As we move over to body width, so now we're going to be checking the body width. Now, what we're doing for the lab here, as I move this table over so I can actually read what I've written, what we're going to do for the body width is we're measuring both the width and the length at their widest and longest points. So if they have a spoiler on the back, or they've got like a wind scoop in the front or whatever it is, we're going to go to the longest point, the widest point and the longest point. So for this vehicle, we've got the width is 1.1625 inches with the millimeters of 29.53. Then the body length in inches is 2.7215, and the body length is 69.13. Now, I'm going over all of this minutia, all of these metrics in this video. I'm not likely going to do this for every single car because I don't know how many people are going to sit through all this information, but I just want to give an example of the components of the vehicles that I'm measuring, how we're measuring them, where these results are going to be. But the database will always be available for anybody who has questions. And again, once I get this up and going, I'll be happy to send these results. I'm not going to ask anybody to pay for anything. It's just going to be for entertainment. It'll be for informational. It'll be for fun, and for people who are interested in really understanding the cars more, the performance more, and that, because I know some folks can really get into it. All right, so we've talked about the width and the length. So the next thing we're going to look at is ground clearance. So again, we're going to look at ground clearance, which is just that, and then we're going to go from the lowest part into versus the ground. So these calipers the Mitutoyo caliper here, again, I'll show this again. This is a digital caliper, which will both measure in inches and the metrics system. So we've got imperial and metrics on here. It's really easy to go back and forth. By the way, when I've calibrated and I've entered the information into my database here, I actually confirmed on the tool as well. And yes, everything matches up. So the nice thing is, for the regular measurements of the car, most of the measurements used with this part of the caliper, but for the ground clearance, because it's so slight, we've got this right here. And as you can see, boom, I'm going to turn it around so you can, I don't have it turned on right now, but you can see how this instrument works. So let's get back to the ground clearance. We've got the ground clearance in inches of 0.1055, and millimeters, that's 2.68. Yes, I'm some of these measurements I'm doing more than once just to ensure I get it accurate, because I want to be as close to accurate as possible. The next thing that we're going to look at is we're going to look at axle play. So some of these cars, these axles can be pretty tight, but some of them have a little bit of play in them. Okay, you see that? You can see this bottom wheel move a little bit. So I'm going to measure the axle play, and then we're going to include kind of where they fall. So for instance, for the same vehicle, number one of the high voltage here, we're using an axle play measurement of, it is in inches 0.123, and we're considering that moderate. Okay, that's moderate axle play. So we're going to have tight, moderate, and loose. It's going to be pretty generic, but like tight basically means there is no play at all. Moderate is probably going to be where I'm assuming most are going to fall, but loose is going to be really, really loose. So the same thing with the rear axle play. We've got 0.135, and then we've got, we've got as moderate as well. Now, here's going to be an interesting thing, because while it might, it could matter, it could have an impact for the speed laps with the drag strip setup. But down the road, when I start building other courses and we do other races and fun activities, we have what's called center of gravity measurement. Okay, so basically, I explained this in a previous video. I have a digital angle gauge by Wixie that I'm using. I've got actually a drum practice pad. Now, the one that I showed in the video didn't really work too well because it was really slick, but I found another practice pad and I'm using the back of. So for anybody who's interested, this is pretty flat. This was actually an innovative percussion practice pad. but the back of it is super. It's rubber soft, so these cars won't necessarily like slide down. Won't slide down, but you see the rubber band. I need to have the rubber band to try to keep the cars at least sort of sat with as I gradually tilt. Okay, so we'll be tilting this using the angle gauge, which is turned off right now, but I have the angle gauge on the pad, and then tilt, and then we'll see what that angle is, and then we'll have the results. So for this, the degree, the angle gauge for this was we'll call it the center of gravity tipping angle, was 63.4. Now that is considered low, which means it took a lot for this car to tip, right? So very low center of gravity. For the angles, we're going to have a few different settings. We've got low, medium, high, and in my my workbook, I'm going to pull up the reference section. So the low is going to be if it tips at 40 degrees or more, and then that would be considered high. Now I'm going to read this piece. So we've got wide stance, flat profile, heavy base, maximum lateral stability, minimal rollover risk on track, favors high-speed cornering. So that's going to be that category. Then we've got medium, which is 20 degrees to 39.99 degrees. That is a balanced mass distribution, typical for standard die-cast sedans and muscle cars. Moderate stability, predictable handling characteristics. So this voltage, or the high voltage, super low center of gravity. So it's probably going to do pretty well on some of these tracks down the road. Down the road, there we go. And then we've got high. So the high is anything below 20 degrees. So if it tips, like it barely, remember, we're starting from here. I'm really starting from here, and I'm raising this up really slowly. And, this might be 20 degrees for it tips versus like slightly more for like this one at 30-ish. So the high is anything below 20 degrees. And that would typically mean it's a tall body, narrow track width, or top heavy casting, elevated rollover risk. So if I decide to do some of these turns, or I've got like jumps or certain angles, some of these might not really make it. Some of these vehicles might not make it. So anyway, top heavy casting, elevated rollover risk. They may exhibit instability or transition bends, and they're speed sensitive. So again, we're going to see how these play out. But we're going to race in the category of weight. That's where they're the categories are going to be broken down for the different weights of the cars. I'm not going to necessarily have a category of center of gravity, at least now. I mean, I'm still going to measure it. We'll have the information in here. We'll have the data in here. But I'm going to track it maybe down the road. If we see there's like some really major differences, we'll make these changes. So in any event, these are the measurements and the results from the very first car for the lab, right? So again, I've got 4 of these. I'm going to go through and I'm going to measure the other 3. I technically have 5. The other one's in this case, but I'm going to just leave that in there because, as I mentioned before, there's a 6-lane track, and I'm going to use 2 of these lanes, typically for a GoPro mount, which will take up 2 lanes, and then this way I can race 4 cars together down the road. But initially, we're going to start single car results so we can really stay focused. And as the database builds, we can add cars and we can do these fun races together. But anyway, number 1, high voltage, came with that pack, this Hot Wheels pack. And I think tomorrow is going to be the first day of running. Well, I've done test runs on the track, so I don't want to make it overly dramatic, but of running the actual tests. So the testing is going to be as follows. We're going to use the same lane every time for the short form track. I will run the car on the same track. We're going to use the same track for all the cars, the same lane, for all the cars. We're going to run 20 practice runs. I'm not going to measure those. That's just to get the car warmed up and the track warmed up. After we run those, I'm going to take the room temperature, humidity, and the track or the lane temperature, enter those into the database as well. And then we're going to do 10 runs of this car, and then we're going to take the average results. So the first test run will be with the Play Robotics gate system. So on the short form drag strip track, and we're going to check the time that it takes from point A to through the gate. And what I'll likely do is we'll see how the format plays out. We'll see if I do all the 20 runs and then the 10 runs. It's 30 runs is a lot of runs to see kind of the same car down the way, but we may want to see how that plays out. I might do some fast motion in that as well, just to kind of move things along. But at the end, we'll still come back. We'll talk about the results and the averages, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So again, I'm really wanting to build this platform, this channel, to be inclusive. I'm interested in feedback. I hope there's a lot of participation down the road. I know it's going to be slow getting started out the gate, but I hope folks will find some value and some fun in the physics side, in the metric side, in the comparison side, and then maybe that helps you decide, maybe it is worth spending a little more on a particular vehicle or trying it out. Or maybe, hey, I'm fine with what I have. Or maybe people want to do their own experiments down the road. The big thing is this is about fun. This is about the 1/64 scale diecast arena, and I want to make sure that everything we do here is above board. So I will always, if there's anything that gets out of whack, if I'm using a different instrument for some reason, if I had to do take a special action on a particular vehicle, I will always keep that up because we want this will be as transparent, this will be as fact-based as we can. In the event that things might need some wiggle room, I'm going to bring that up too. So we'll do this, keep this as fair as possible. So, I know we're not doing brain surgery here, but I still want this to be a very solid effort, balancing kind of like the fun. I want to balance the fun and the science, just like it's going to be that as much as it is the gravity and mass, versus friction, which is really what this is about. We'll let the ramp decide. That's true too, because the ramp is going to be the launching point. So enough of my rambling. Hopefully you all enjoyed learning a little bit more about this process, about the tools, about the measurements of the particular car, and how I'm gonna go about this. You got a good sense for it. I'm gonna plan on doing some test runs tomorrow, and measure the other. And I'm gonna do the measurements of the other 3 high voltages as well, and we'll see how tomorrow. But I'm just planning right now. The only test run I'm going to plan on is number 1. Again, I've written that on there. The other 3, I've written their numbers on as well, so I can keep track of them. That's about it for now. Again, I'm glad you've joined me, and if you stayed this long, kudos. I appreciate it. And I hope you don't mind subscribing, hitting the like button. I know everybody asks that. You'd think it's a natural thing to do if you like it, but I'll ask anyway. And just keep in mind, again, this is Strick with Peak Speed Lab, where, again, we've got where gravity and mass meet friction, and the ramp decides who wins. All right? Cheers, all.